Welcome back to the Good, the Bad and the Ugly podcast with me, Tony Murrell, proudly sponsored by Eyes Wide Open Clothing and Loco's Competitions. This week's special guest is Victoria Rixon, also known as the Honest Midwife. From performing CPR on newborns to exposing the dangers women and babies face in the NHS today. This episode is raw, eye-opening and one you don't want to miss. Thanks for listening and watching this episode.
A midwife was hiding in the cupboard. She went, "Don't become a midwife, it's horrific." So you're telling me since the birth of the NHS in 1947, we've not had one midwife that's come out and said it's really, really bad. They're probably the most gagged profession. Maternity services is the biggest scandal that we will ever see in UK history.
Welcome to the Good, the Bad and the Ugly podcast with me, Tony Murrell, proudly sponsored by Eyes Wide Open Clothing and Loco's Competitions. This week's special guest is Victoria. Really looking forward to sharing the Good, the Bad and the Ugly with us. How are we? You okay?
Thank you
very much for coming all this way. I know you come from Plymouth. It's a big journey, but I know you're very busy, and I know, what you're highlighting, speaking about today, exposing today. Listen, I know this story is going to open many people's eyes and it's going to blow many people's minds as well. What you were going to talk about, being threatened by the NHS, you would disappear if you spoke out against safety concerns. That's not even touching the surface. I just want to say thank you, Victoria, and, to opening up and, sharing the good, the bad and the ugly with us. So listen, just going to get right into it. Where you from, where you grew up, school life and family life was like?
Yeah, good. I was born in Portsmouth. Dad was Navy, mum was stay at home, so dad was always away. Got two sisters, and then I had a good life. I had a really good upbringing, your normal gripes in families. And then I've got 4 children of my own, and now I live in Devon.
You live in Devon, yeah?
Yeah.
Right down the bottom of the country.
Yeah, but I did grow up in Scotland.
Did you grow up in Scotland?
For about 12 years, 12 years old. I'm a bit of a Scots girl.
So you got brothers and sisters, did you say?
2 sisters.
2 sisters, husband, 4 children.
Husband, 4 children, yeah. Oldest is 23 and the youngest is 5. So I've got a big spectrum of birth story over that time of how much the system's changed because I've been a woman in it and now I'm a midwife in it.
Yeah. So, being like a mother, a wife, daughter, sister and a friend, I know what we're going to talk about is, it's hard to try and keep up with all that. How was it, how all this come about, joining the NHS, and that's where the story we're going to get into. The story of joining the NHS, how did that come about?
So my mum trained as a midwife and she didn't qualify in the end. She didn't go on to become a midwife. But I remember it being really difficult for her, in 2001 when she qualified, when she was training. And then I had a home birth in 2011. And the whole story of my birth was so magical because I wasn't in the hospital setting where I'd had 2 previous births in the hospital. It was a ritual. It was literally like I'd gone through some initiation because there was no intervention. There was no one telling me what to do. It was a complete unbalanced from the hospital. It just tipped, all just being at home and being in my own power, knowing my own sovereignty, knowing all those things. So I gave birth to him at home. I knew when I was fully dilated. I knew it all. My body just told me, it knew what it was doing. And as I gave birth to him, I can remember watching myself in the room. So I could see the midwife here, the midwife there, me here, my husband there. I had a friend and family over here. I remember them all like I'm watching the room. It was like an out-of-body experience. And then when I had him, and I remember getting up, it was like I'd left an old part of me behind. And I went through to this next womanly. It was unbelievable. And then I became a midwife because I wanted to give that to women. Yeah, yeah. And I never did.
You never did. So obviously, it was the next question I was going to ask you was obviously why did you want to become a midwife? And I think you just answered that with like you saying your mum and stuff, and that's basically. Was it just your mum that was behind that, or was it just yourself? You just thought something I'd really like to get into.
No, it was. I was always in sales before. So
was your sales?
Sales, yeah. As a manager, sales manager. I knocked doors for years. I was like proper. That's probably where I get my confidence and my grit from. Like the door being slammed in your face 100 times a day was brutal. But I used to just skip along, go, they can shut the door. So I've got quite a very nonchalant attitude.
You're outgoing and yeah.
And I think everyone has a choice to shut the door, but. When I had that experience, it was like I had an awakening inside me to say, you're a woman and what you've just been through, you will never be the same again. So I almost detached from this real 3D door knocking, chasing the next like chasing the next job and salary. It became about really becoming a nurturer, becoming that real womanly side, because I was 29. So, and then I just really initiated into that, and that I just went on and I just thought, I want to give that to women.
Yeah.
And that's where it came from.
Joining the NHS, what, becoming a midwife, what year was it when you joined?
So I started as a student midwife in 2013, and then I was in the same hospital. So you train at university 45% of the time and in hospital. It changes all the time on purpose. And then 55% in the hospital. So I was at the hospital that I then went on to work in. So, big change, like from working in a normal contract law type world out of the system. Like I always think, teachers go to school, they go to uni, they go back to school. It's a different type of, like it's an institution. I've never been in that before. I was absolutely, it was the demise of me. No, it was, I felt like I fitted.
Yeah.
I felt like, I fit here with this, but I fit here with the role. I fit here with being a midwife. And I was like chasing, not the grades, it was the practice. I wanted to be the absolute best at my job. Yeah. That's what I chased. So I got a first in my practice, but not in my theory, because I never really gave a crap about theory. Sorry.
It's okay. You can swear if you want.
So it was for me, when I went in, this darkness. It was like this darkness I couldn't, and I changed almost overnight. I lost my confidence. And my whole life I've been full of this vitality.
Was it immediately when you immediately
you got that? It was almost like that when I went to uni. There was something very dark. It felt very oppressive, very heavy. You can't speak, you can't do this, you can't wear a hoodie with uni on it that you're a midwife, you can't wear your uniform. That's fine for hygiene. But it was about detaching you and making you fearful of everything around you. That's where it started.
Do you know what? It's funny you mentioned that, Victoria, because before we started this podcast, I was in a taxi with a taxi driver, a lady, and she said, I've only been doing the job a couple of weeks. And I said to her, why? What did you used to do? She went, I used to be a midwife. She went, I'm still registered. And she was telling me, and it was a taxi journey from here to, I was going to watch some football, and she said to me, and I just found it so interesting. And we got speaking, and she was telling me, and I hadn't told her I was starting a podcast because no one knew. And I got out the taxi, paid, and I come back to her and I went, excuse me, would you be interested in coming on the podcast to speak about being a midwife and why you've changed? And she went, oh yeah, but I could see she was reluctant to speak. And then we had a little conversation, and she said to me, there's young girls out there now who will go to university who think they're going to have this fantastic profession, get themselves into thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of debt. And I went, 100,000? Yes. She went, Tony, I'm telling you now, she went, you would not believe it. Some of them are breaking down on the wards because they're understaffed. They're not happy with the environment, the system. And what she said was, they're giving up after like 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, into like so many years, and they're in debt. They're debted up to their eyeballs. And I was like, do you not fancy coming on? And then obviously I came across you and I thought, wow, this was meant to be, because obviously I seen what you're speaking about and this lady. And we had another lady on, Vicky from the Padded Cell podcast. She was a midwife, same again. And what you've just said there, I wanted to be the best. I knew I was good at my job. When you go into a job, you give 110%. You get out what you put in, you know what I mean? And especially in that way, you're delivering, bringing new babies into the world, and you're looking after the mum giving birth and all that. But the things that she mentioned, understaffed, you're dancing with people's lives, you know what I mean? And it's scary.
It's a vocation, it's an art, and it takes years to develop that art. It's no different to if you do IT or if you are a teacher. It's an art. You find your flow. And you're never given that chance to flow. You're never given the chance to evolve.
Right.
It's like bish, bash, bosh, boom, in. And you're just overwhelmed. And we're sick.
Just
we're
like
sick.
the production line.
We've got mental health. Not everybody, but there's a lot of mental health. There's a lot of cancer amongst NHS staff. There's a lot of illnesses, autoimmune diseases. I got type 1 diabetes the first year I was a midwife. Type 1 diabetes. Boom, just like that. I was pregnant, but it didn't go away, and I've lived with it ever since.
Really? And these concerns, from the off, was you like,
early, very straight. When you're 29 and you've done a bit of employment work, and you've been out there in the world and you know how you're respected and you think, well, I've had a really good employment career. I've been in lots of different jobs in sales, in retail, management. Do you know what? I'm ready for this. I've got a bit of life experience. I've got some children. I then thought, why would I go back and put myself in debt? But I'm going back to propel forward. So you make that decision, and it's not lightly. It's a big decision because you've got to think about, what does this entail? So I volunteered on the wards to start with. The very first shift I went on when I volunteered, because that would help my application. My midwife was hiding in the cupboard. I'll never forget her. Her name was Kim. She was crying in the cupboard. She went, don't become a midwife. It's horrific. I completely ignored that red flag, obviously. I thought she's just having a bad day or a bad decade. And
how long had she been a midwife for?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
Because I was only volunteering. I was this little, volunteer that they all, and midwives would say, like, you wait, you're going to hate it. And because I'm very positive and proactive, and they were like, you wait, you're going to hate it. And I didn't hate it. I just couldn't get up to make the change, so I decided to get out and do the change.
Yeah, and we will get onto that because, like I say, but to hear that, like, on your first day, that must have been like, what's going on here? Because I think it's like in many places you do, where people start in a new environment. Oh, you're gonna make this job. You'll always get one or two, but from the off, especially
before it even started at college, I was voted as student rep because that's just who I am. And the male lecturer that was at the uni horrifically wouldn't stop texting me, asked me things about my clitoris. Yeah, I've got it all. I've got it all on I gave it to the uni and said, this is absolutely appalling. I'm married.
Should have been struck. Gone. Should have been.
No, he got shipped off somewhere else. But this man was having relationships with lots of different midwives. It was so unprofessional and it was creepy. So there was a lot that I'd never been exposed to in the normal working world.
But straight.
It was like boom, and the university would be like, almost like regimented. Don't do that. Sit like this. It was almost a bit like you couldn't be late for uni. How if you go and do a degree in anything, it's quite chilled. You don't want to go uni that day, but no, you've got to turn up. It's like
regimental, like you
regimental. And when you're older and you've not come out of school, you know different. You know that there's something not quite right.
Yeah.
And it went, I called that lecturer a twat, and I got put through a
disciplinary or something.
Yeah, it was like pulled into the office and reprimanded, and I thought, well, it's freedom of speech. He is a twat, and that's who I am. But in the real world, you could call someone a twat and get away with it. But in this, it's like they grill you very quickly, and they put heaviness on you, so your vibration lowers, so you can't find your voice, and then you conform, and then you get in line, and then you're a robot.
They want to control you.
That's exactly it.
So, like the salary and stuff like that, does that appeal to midwives, or is it? It's not that. It's not that
the
great?
money. No, I think we all know it's not the most well-paid job. I mean,
which it should be a well-paid job for what you're doing.
Yes, I think your starting salary is about 28. It's band 5 and then band 6 because midwives look after mum and baby. They have more autonomy. They prescribe and they give medication, whereas if you're a nurse, you need to do an extra prescribing course, but we do all that at university. So when I became a band 6, I was jumped up a salary. I think it was about 30 something. But when I actually broke down my salary the day that I left, my last salary was £64. Bearing in mind there was a bit of a pro rata difference, but
there's deductions and all that in there. Did you take all?
But my main salary, my deduction was I worked 2 days a week because I couldn't work any more than that being a midwife. It was far too much. You couldn't recover in between.
How many births over them 2 days were you dealing with?
What, 1 or 2? It could be 3. One shift. I'm pretty confident it was 4 babies by the end of my shift. I was exhausted.
On a 12-hour shift.
Yeah. Yeah, I was exhausted. I can remember walking out there crying, saying, this is too... I don't even remember the names. I don't remember the rooms because it all blended into one. And my manager said, don't worry about your documentation. We'll do that tomorrow. Well, that's what's my legal... That's negligence. So there was a lot of things that the practice would force you in. But for that, I was earning £1,350 a month. But I had a work car that came off that as well. But that's what I took home a month.
That's scandalous.
Yeah.
I mean, this is
you're
why...
given CPR on babies. You're given resus, bleeding women, acute medicine. I mean, labour ward is like A&E. They call it a mini A&E. So it's acute, it's quick, it's fast paced. It's not one-on-one. So my code of practice says I have to be one-on-one in labour, and you never are. It was tough. And you're fighting this inner calling as a woman. My divine connection to women and birth is I want to be here.
It's a special moment, isn't it?
The only way I can be in this system is through the NHS. So I can't really do this anywhere else unless it's not registered by law and protected by law.
Yeah.
So I've got no choice but to be here. And so my connection to myself was screaming, stay, 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 stay. And the other part of me was saying, you have to get out now.
Get out.
So you've got this real inner battle. And I think I realised that a lot of my colleagues swing on that pendulum probably most days.
Did you want to make the break? They're scared to make the break and stuff like that. The traumatic, like the aftercare, what was the aftercare like for these traumatic experiences?
Oh, none.
Non-existence?
No, I mean, you'd get they started something called Sustain at the hospital that I was at. And it's, on paper, it's fantastic. But in practice, it's not possible to get, we haven't got the time. And when you go home, so I've said this before, when I used to go home, I used to literally shake at the door to get it all out. Shake it off, don't take it home, don't take it home. And I would,
the kids and your
husband, and I would walk in the door and I would have no energy to even talk to my family. And that would go on for a couple of days. It was like an after effect of like you were seeping the dark energy out of you every day. It was so hard, and you can't decompartmentalize it all. There's so much. So there's shifts alone are 1 minute you're in a room delivering, the next minute you're sat at the desk eating biscuits. Is that all you eat as a midwife? Biscuits and toast, because you haven't got a chance to have a break. So I didn't have a break for about 4 years, ever, on 12.5 hours, even as a type 1. So it was really tough. So they were expecting you to use your brain, your cognitive thinking in an acute setting. And then when it all goes, pear-shaped, there's no aftercare. You don't get a phone call to say, how was your day? Or an email, are you okay? But that's planned that way. Really? Because if we keep you in a low energy, you're not going to have any energy to pick up on what's really going on, which means you won't raise concerns because you're too exhausted. Because you haven't got any fight in you.
But it's, when you look at it from an outer perspective, when you look at it like that, something goes wrong, you're delivering a baby, could be twins, could be triplets. That experience of like, if something goes wrong,
you're on heightened energy.
How do you deal with that mentally? And I know you've got to be on it to be like trying to mum, babies. How do you keep it together? That's especially if like something occurs, like
I'll tell you how they do it. They task focus you. Now, what I mean by that is, if I had a lady that was in labour in a room and she was twins, let's say that, for instance. So I know fine well I've got to print off a policy for twins to make sure I know what I'm living with the guideline and the nice guidance in my practice. So I've got a lady in labour and she's high risk. I now know I've got this policy, and this policy to cover. So I print them off and put them in the notes. Have I done this, and this? Yes. So you're not even thinking about what's going on. You're just ticking boxes all day, every day, like a robot. So I'm not asking the woman, I am, but I'm not listening. Are you okay? I'm just saying, is she okay? Yes. But is she okay? Because you haven't got the time to talk to them. So what you're doing is you're checking equipment to check it's legible, it's legal, it's got the right dates on it, you're getting all your equipment together. So by the time I've gone in a room on handover, it's taken me an hour just to check everything, read the notes, do a handover to the doctors. I haven't even really sat down with this family. You can, but it's so hard because the system doesn't allow it. So when you talk about, do you really understand? Now I'm out, the grief is coming now. The pain is now. The sadness is now. The things I hadn't remembered are coming out now because I've got time to reflect.
So it's been there in the back of your mind all this time, and now you've got time to sort of think about it.
It's like, I know it's really bad and I know it's awful, but I can't figure it out.
Yeah.
That's how I describe it.
That's how exactly. And
then when you leave, you're a bit like, you're lost because you're calling. Because this midwifery is an art, like I say, and if you can't have that calling anymore, and you think these hands will never deliver a baby again, it's really sad. It's really sad, and then you think, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? I didn't even think about it. I was just out the door. So when you think about that, that's my own grief journey. But that's not just mine. Yeah. That echoes to every midwife that's had to go in this situation.
That's what I was going to say to you. Work colleagues and people you've, obviously different practices, whatever. Were they raising concerns as well, or would they?
Yeah,
just get blank.
You get so far and you get nothing. And you get so far and you get nothing. So I'm very thorough. I've got a folder of emails, documents that I've always been without realising it, I'm very astute. Yeah. And I do things and then I realise, oh, I needed that and now I need it. So raised concerns all the time. I was called a maverick, you know, oh, you know, you're always raising concerns. But I've never done it unkindly, and I've always done it in the best interest of staff.
You've done it because you believed in it and it was the right thing, you know. That's that. If something's right in life, if it's not right, don't do it. Do you know what I mean? It's if you believe in it, go with it. You know what I mean? But why do you think people are so scared to speak out?
Oh, well,
obviously losing the job, I understand that, but
it starts at uni. But also,
like you said, at that regimental...
It starts at uni, but if you've come to uni with any trauma from your life, primary trauma of anything from childhood or in your teens, anything secondary is just going to trigger you. So you're going to get heavier and heavier in vibration, whereas you need to, in this role, you have to have a high energy. You have to have a high connection to yourself. You have to not be able to take anything too personally. So it flares up a lot of your inner demons, this type of work, especially when you're faced with death or anything like that. So when you start going through and you start raising concerns, what then happens is, for instance, I was on shift one day and it was so busy, and we had a board of inductions of ladies being induced. But they're inducing more, but we had no beds and we had nowhere for them to go. So why keep inducing them? Oh, because we have to, because that's what the guideline says. There's no logic in any of this. You know, it doesn't make any sense. So what we were doing was telling the patients, we are short-staffed and we are so busy. We got reprimanded for that. We got told not to tell the patients the truth. Yes. And then we would Daytex, which is an internal reporting system, which goes to like 20 managers. We're not having breaks because we were trying to cover ourselves, that if anything went wrong and we hadn't eaten, we were trying to cover our backs. So staff are working in a real fear-based practice because they're thinking and everyone was saying something's going to go terribly wrong in a minute. That's what we're like teetering on a really bad situation.
Stepping on eggshells, yeah.
So when you start, so if you're getting that every day at work and you're getting on a Friday night at 5 o'clock an email, I need to have a word with you on Monday. Have I killed a baby? It's your automatic response. Have I killed a woman? That's what you live with every day as a midwife.
In the back of your mind.
So if you get an email from a manager, I need to talk to you, and guess what? I'll never forget a story. A midwife told me, I've got an email. She was in bits.
She was traumatised.
I've got an email. She read it to me. It just says she wants to chat with you. Yeah, but what's it about? Because it's triggering. It's what's going on, because we're all fearful we're going to lose our jobs, right? So this midwife goes to the manager, and the manager says to her, you didn't write the patient's notes on the front of this form. This is the scaremongering tactic that they use. It's so subtle and corrosive, slow and long, that you start living on eggshells. Yeah. So when you want to go and speak out, you're either at a point where you do not care even if you lose everything, or it's out of anger. And if it's out of anger, you're going to run out of steam.
Yeah.
So I got to a point where I became smart and I became more aware of the system, that the managers are gatekeepers, have no idea, they're the puppets. They think they're doing all the right thing.
Yeah, the people above are just playing.
They're like, yeah, we're keeping everything. We're like gridlocked. We're keeping everything in. Like, you do this and you do that and stay in that box.
Yeah.
So I've ticked my box. What's going on above? What's up here? What's this entity above? So I think when I started to understand that and becoming a union rep, I realised. I remember in my last union meeting, there was a really awful case of a manager who'd done a long time in the NHS. She was being pushed out and bullied by her colleagues. They all turned against her. It was a terrible witch hunt. And at the end of it, the union rep said to me, what have you learned in that? And I put leave. Put leave on the form. I said, I'm leaving, I'm out, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. So people don't speak out, because when you do, we've known that whistleblowers have been killed, run over, they've gone missing. So obviously for me, I whistleblew internally. You could call it that. You could call it raising concerns or complaints. Either way, you're speaking out about unsafe conditions for women, midwives and babies and families, which is a crime if you're enticing them in. So that's like saying, come on my Boeing plane and its wings off somehow. And you're on the plane and you're enticed on. You buy a ticket online for this plane and you get on the plane. If that plane goes down and it wasn't safe, you were enticed on against your will that's the same as the NHS. It's no different. But you come in here, it's safe, we will look after you. You get in and it's not safe. It's no different. It's just on the ground and it's conditioned. So people that speak out like me, I've told the world that I was told I would go missing. Whistleblowers go missing overnight. That's what one of the chief.
And is that a fear for you, Victoria, or?
Not now. Last year I was
Was
I was a bit of a wreck. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was really scary.
Your
I
husband
wouldn't
and
walk my
stuff,
dog.
what was he,
Yeah,
you know?
locking the doors. You know, my kids. I was like, what if someone kidnaps them? People were telling me that
Was you
social
being
services.
threatened? Was you being threatened or any?
Not at that time.
But it was just in the back of your mind
People were
because
saying to me, like, you do know that your children will get taken off you and the police will arrest you. And I'm like, what for? So there's my sensible brain not fully understanding that puppet thing. That took me a while. But not long after that, there was a comment made online that I was responsible for the death of a baby.
Yeah.
And that was they came pretty much within a few weeks of each other. It was really tough.
That must have been horrific for you to hear, because you showed something that you were so passionate about and wanting to, loving the job and stuff, and straight from the off, you can see this isn't a nice place and stuff. But are women and babies in danger under the NHS?
Yes. Don't even have to think about it, yes.
Really?
We've got birth trauma 1 in 3.
Wow.
Whether that's physical, mental, emotional or spiritual, we've got birth trauma 1 in 3. That is astronomical. And what does birth trauma look like? Does it look like a baby loss? Does it look like an instrumental 3rd degree tear on a woman's perineum that she can never have a baby vaginally again?
It's cesarean, have to go to have cesarean.
Does it have cesarean? Are we looking at being left on the ward and induced over 10 days? So this is the subtle corrosiveness I'm talking about. You get told the whole way through your pregnancy you need to be induced because you're high risk. Okay, so you spend your whole pregnancy going, I've got to be induced. I pray my baby comes before I have to get induced. This is the thought process of women.
Is this what they're being told? They're high risk when they're not?
Potentially.
Yeah.
Potentially. It's a choice, isn't it? Depends what doctor you see. But guidelines say whether you're high risk or not, but they're guidelines. So women don't take responsibility to look up their own health conditions and work out if they are high risk. They just trust. They're
pregnant, aren't they? They've got enough to concentrate on.
Yeah. So for instance, you get told your whole pregnancy, you're going to be induced. You'll be induced because of this guideline, that guideline, and it's all documented. Patient aware that they're being induced at 36 weeks. So that patient goes away and they go, I really hope my baby just comes on its own. That happens to every woman that's got that thought process. So you induce her at 38 weeks, 39 weeks, say for instance, but the hospital's really busy. So you've given this woman a date to be induced, which she's known for a few weeks, right? She gets into the hospital and there's no bed. So she has to sit and wait for another day. But you told her she had to be induced by 39 and 2 because she was high risk. So now she's thinking, is my baby safe? Is my baby all right? So then she's calling the call bell every 2 minutes. Is my baby okay? And you're like, yes, your baby's fine.
Because she's worrying like mad.
Because she's got in her head 39 and 2. But now she's 40 and they still haven't got her to labour ward. So we had about 20 of those women, 10, 15, churning on each other, churning and churning and churning. And this is what's happening across the NHS. So our induction rate is 48% as a country. You're inducing just under half of women, which means only those women are labouring naturally. And our caesarean section rate is almost there.
Yeah.
If you go to the top of Scotland, the families in the Highlands, their induction of labour rate is about 90%.
C-section, isn't it?
Induction.
Oh,
so they travel up 3 hours, 6-hour round trip to give birth because they've shut their hospital.
What?
People don't know about this case, and it will be huge. I hope they get that in the Human Rights Court in Europe.
Didn't change that, because that's absolutely...
They shut their hospital based on one baby death. One baby death they had, so they shut the hospital. It wasn't for that. It was to withdraw the funds to the Highlanders, so they would retreat into the cities. But these people have lived there for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So these women have to travel on the most dangerous road in the UK, the A9, in labour, pregnant, in the snow, 3-hour journey to Inverness. And what is harrowing about this story, which is very, very dear to my heart, these people, is that, so this is a lot of the research that's come out of the work I've been doing, is that out of fear of labouring alone or on the road, they will book an Airbnb for 2 weeks before their due date and live in there, in this city.
So they can, obviously, if they go before...
Why do people have the money for that these days?
Exactly.
It's absolutely... So many of them don't have babies. There is a huge amount of mental health and suicide in men there. And yet, all the other hospitals that you've seen, how many babies died recently in all these hospitals? 200 and some, 150 in others. One baby.
That's absolutely...
What is going on is of dark stuff.
Why are we not seeing this in... It's like many things that you don't see in out there on,
because midwives are doing one thing.
Yeah.
They're in their practice, and women are in their their energy. And what's happened is the system has now broken it down that midwives are now being portrayed as dangerous, which some are, and women are now having all these traumas that the midwife wasn't their advocate, but the midwives are being told what to do by the obs and gynae. So we're probably in the worst situation in women's birth and midwives' care than we've ever been.
Now then, everyone, sorry for interrupting the episode. Just a message from our sponsor, Eyes Wide Open Clothing. They've got everything from tracksuits, t-shirts, tracky bottoms, swimwear, you name it, they've got it. Don't forget to use the discount code TGTBTU at the checkout for 10% off your entire order. Did you ever see blatant cover-up or, you know, substandard dangerous practice, I think?
I wouldn't say my colleagues... Now, the hospital that I was at, and I have to make this quite clear, the midwives I work with on the shop floor are brilliant.
Yeah.
When I left and opened a Safer Maternity campaign, I realised that this wasn't a localised problem, that this was so systemic in the whole of the country and across the world. The stories that flooded in from other hospitals were far worse than where I worked. So I actually deem my trust that I worked at to not be as bad
as others.
So my colleagues are genuinely quite open and they're great. Obviously you get some weaved in, but I've never seen anybody cover up any practice. What you do see is an intolerance to women. So because you're feeling burnt out and exhausted, you've lost all of your charm and your ability to be a nurturer and catch the vulnerable women. That was really missing, especially particularly during COVID.
Burnt out and just physically, mentally.
And women are coming in fear-based.
Yeah.
So if you imagine you're making a decision based on fear and you've got a midwife practicing in fear, what are you leading to? What's the energy connection?
What's going to happen? Yeah, yeah.
So there's no one in confidence. There's no like this real nurture. And like, for instance, I had a lady that wanted to birth in the pool and her waters had gone, so her membranes ruptured a few days before. That's completely off the record. No. But she wanted it, so I advocated for it. Yeah, but she might do this. I said, but she wants it. This is what we're missing. The women are not allowed to make the decisions. So if the outcome, and actually have an exit strategy. This is what we don't talk about enough. As a midwife, I always adopted an exit strategy. When you have a birth plan, great. If you want that birth plan, but if it has expectations rigorously around it, you're not going to be coping with the anticipation of change. So if you've got any issues of OCD or controlling behaviours in yourself, if anything were to change in your birth, you're going to be triggered. So have an exit strategy. Be kind to yourself. Say, okay, I've reached a point of I'm uncomfortable. I need to exit. And it's okay to exit.
You've got a plan B sort of thing, isn't it?
People don't talk about that. I made all those things up myself. I taught my students these things.
Yeah.
You know? And the other thing I really must touch on about the student journey is how long do you think it was after I qualified that I had to train a student?
Probably about 12 months, maybe.
Oh, about 12 weeks. Sometimes straight away.
3 months into your...
Yep. So, when you're a student, you have to deliver 40 normal births and placentas. We don't see that as much now because women are sicker. Because I believe the vaccine.
Yeah.
So we've got all these high-risk women now. So if you've got a high-risk woman and she's not low risk, your birth numbers, you're not getting them. When you qualify, you have to deliver the babies that you've got, okay? Because you need the numbers. So imagine I've been a student for 4 years, which I was. I was a student for 4 years. I've delivered my 40 babies and now I need to go on and work at my art. I need to go on and work out my normal. Because if I don't know normal, I don't know high risk.
Yeah.
So if you go to a home birth and you don't recognise the whole of the norm, you'll never be able to understand when you need to escalate or when you need to make a change, an exit strategy.
Yeah.
So with regards to that, imagine I had 12 weeks to work out my art. Because what I then had to do was hand over my women that I was caring for to a student who then had to deliver. So I would never deliver a baby again. So I put my absolute foot down and said, no way am I delivering caring for students. Absolutely not. No, it's not happening. And I didn't.
Wow.
So these students, imagine you come out of school, you've gone to uni, you're 22 and you've qualified, and you've now got
responsibility of delivering these?
It's the
3 months into you,
I refused.
that's
I
scary.
said absolutely not, and I didn't.
And that goes on. I mean,
Yes, yes, and then the students aren't getting the right care because the midwife hasn't built any confidence. Because there's a lot of research about this. When you qualify and you're a band 5, you're no longer got that student status of these little epaulets that keep you a bit safe. When you've got epaulets, you're a little bit like, oh, I'm safe. I've got someone to go to. As soon as those epaulets are gone, you've got a registration, which means you are liable for negligence in any way should you not abide by your PIN. But if the system doesn't allow you to work safely, you're at a risk of being a Lucy Letby, how I feel.
wow.
So you've now got to work at your art. That takes years and years and years of practice to build that confidence, thinking about for yourself. Because as a third year, you only care for 2 women in your caseload. But as a midwife, you're now caring for your woman in your care, but could have 18 women on the ward.
And every birth's different.
Yeah.
Every birth, complications and stuff like that. Dead easy
How can I
births.
train a student when I've only just been 12 weeks out of the womb, I call it? You're 12 weeks out of the journey.
Yeah, it's all new to you as well.
That's like giving your 1-year-old and saying be a mum, be a dad, the other way around.
Exactly. You're just letting them to the slaughter, basically, isn't it? It's a daunting thing.
Student bullying is really quite rife.
That's what, bullying culture. Not just in your practice, obviously, but people who've reached out to you. There is a bullying culture, is that right?
100%, yeah. Yeah, I've even had a professor in midwifery message me, and she sent me her, I think it was her master's or her PhD. She did it on bullying and midwifery. It's rife. Yeah, it's rife. And it's very systemic. So you've got to think, who do you think my biggest trollers have been the last year?
Probably managers, what's the name of your
Midwives and nurses.
Midwives and nurses, yeah.
Yeah, it's been horrific. Your own colleagues who've walked that walk, who have probably had the same feelings you've had. All those feelings wrapped up in that journey. We've all felt them, and we all want one outcome. We want safety.
And this is all through you speaking out and like you're saying, raising concerns that weren't dealt with. And then you're whistleblowing because, like you're saying, this is going on all over the UK and all over the world. And I
believe maternity services is the biggest scandal that we will ever see in UK history, along with probably the sex trafficking.
Seriously?
It's all encompassed.
That's scary for you to say that. That is, you would think midwifery is like you're bringing new life into the world, this and that.
Okay, so let's think about this. The NHS has been born since 1947. Birth was always at home. The only reason it came to hospital was if you didn't have good sanitation. So if you lived in the institutions, you lived in work, you lived on top of each other. If you didn't have good sanitation and hygiene, you were in the the stillbirth rate did drop and the harm dropped. But where did it tip from all of a sudden being no home births to in the hospital? Now think about Scotland. Where did it tip? 1 baby died in Scotland, but 200 died down here, and they're not shut, but they are. Where was the tip? What is the tip? So there's always
something behind.
There's always an agenda. Home births are very non-existent now. There's a fear behind home birth. I would be scared to go to a home birth now. I would literally I feel like I've lost it's been zapped out of me, so I don't know how to birth.
Considering how much you were very yourself, your experience that you've had, totally against it.
If they said, Vic, go to a home birth, I'd shit myself.
Really?
I'd be like, yeah, absolutely. So midwives, so you're telling me since the birth of the NHS in 1947, we've not had one midwife that's come out and said it's really, really bad. Are you come on, where's the midwife stories? They're probably the most gagged profession because they're subservient. Because midwives and nurses just want to be helpful. That's it. They just want to help you. That's their calling as a woman. Men have it as well. So you play on that. They play on that. They play on the fact you won't say a word because you're weak. Because you take the lowest paid salary out of the whole system, apart from the MCAs and things. But as a registration, you do. And you take the hardest hit because it's a stressful job and you say nothing. So where are all those voices?
Yeah.
It's not possible for there not to be a midwife story in all this. And there's not. It's not out there.
And there's that many people that, you know, like yourself, who've you know, tried to speak out, but they're scared, or they've been, you know, like you say.
How many midwives do you think remove themselves and nurses remove themselves from the register in 2021? 21,000.
Thousands, I was going to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Why? Why is nobody asking that question? So if you go on the NMC register, you will see a list of all the people.
Is this for the public domain? You can see it.
Yeah, because I'm a registrant.
Yeah.
If you look down the register, you'll see Anne Smith. I say Anne because it's A and Smith because it's most common, just so you know. So you see, and it says her registration, and it says active, lapsed, or misconduct. So even if, which I've seen with my own eyes in court bundles and bundles of evidence of midwives recently, these people are referred by their managers who have got gripes with them because they're mavericks. They refer them to the NMC as a tool to bully them. This is really common. 16 people committed suicide. Yes.
Seriously?
You can Google that yourself. It's on the internet. 16
Took their own lives.
during NMC proceedings that might not even have been fair. It could have been for she called me a name. But the public can see it. So if you Google the name, it says the name and then it says misconduct and it will say what the misconduct is. So even if they're not guilty, they're publicly shamed. This is another scare tactic. So Lucy Letby, when she was under it, would have said misconduct. Now, I've come off the register myself. My name disappears. No one can see that I've lapsed it because they don't want people to know that people lapse. Why would people lapse? What's the reason? Why would a midwife lapse their registration? You don't, because you have to apply to go back on the register, and that takes a lot of time and effort.
Yeah.
So there's a lot at play here.
That's scary. But I've heard some units promote bad midwives upwards to sort of problem rather than dealing with it. Is this true?
Yeah. I've got, you know, I talked about this one, and it might bore people because I've said it, but it makes absolute sense. If you're a terrible manager, instead of getting rid of you, you're up rather than out.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen some horrific practices from management. Some amazing managers that I would aspire to be like. If I'm honest, there are some brilliant people. I think you're great, but I would be more gobbier. I would be more banging on the door.
Yeah.
Whereas they're not.
Are they to the yes people?
To the book.
Are the yes people?
They do great, but it's to the yes people. Yeah. But managers I've seen, so I can remember taking handover from a band 7, who's my manager. She's my leader. I'm supposed to be inspired by her. I'm supposed to
look up to her, and
I'm supposed to go, oh, she's got good practice. I'll take that. I'll learn that. A bit like your child learns from its mother and father. And in this role of a midwife, you always have these people that you think they are like God. They're incredible. I want to be like them. They're brilliant. And then you have the people who go, I won't adopt that. And this manager, I had to take over from her. So she had a handover sheet with the patients on. And I'm type 1 diabetic. So I know what it's like when you're having a hypo. You know how to fix it. You're confident. You deal with it. Now, I went into a patient and she was having a hypo. Now, the manager had put a new practice in place that you had to go in every room and hand over in front of the patient, which I think is fair because the patient should be triangulated in the care pathway. So I walked in and I saw on the handover sheet that she was type 1 diabetic because I'd read it before. And I went in and she was sipping orange juice really slowly, but that's a medical emergency. A hypoglycemic event is a medical emergency because you can die from it quite quickly when you're type 1. Right. Yeah. So diabetics have about 180 decisions to make a day about their diabetes on top of their life. It's really debilitating. We don't talk about it enough.
Isn't it?
14% of people have significant mental health with type 1. So she's drinking this orange juice and I look at my manager to wait and see if she's aware of what's going on. And I'm looking at her going, this lady's having a hypo. Oh, is she? Oh, yeah. I'll get the hypo box then, shall I? Because you have to document that you've had a hypo, what treatment you've used. But she knows what she's doing. However, you still don't not act. And I saw her do that on quite a lot of things. She'd missed all the baby obs. This is a manager. Yeah.
It's scary.
It's really scary.
Because like you say, you know, a previous guest we had on, she was a midwife and I spoke to her yesterday and she said, Tony, no mention that. She went, I seen that. Exactly like yourself, and you know, and whether you take that practice on yourself, which you know it's not right, because everyone, you do try and learn, we all learn every day, we learn something new from everyone every day. But what if that practice isn't right, and that's certainly not right, it's like, Oh, that's
And, and you know, they keep saying the whistleblowing is protected in law. Speaking up's really important. So I went for a freedom to speak up Guardian. I was a union rep as well for a GMB. I wasn't a union for the Royal College of Midwives because they are the most corrupt union you'll ever have, and they're our governing union. But they're so corrupt. They talk about people's cases because it's midwives that are working in the unit that you work with then represent you, and it's just not right in these cases. And then when you get an area manager come in that then doesn't support you in the right way and is talking to your manager about you, then you realise you're in really muddy waters. So a lot of people don't have any extra support. So many people don't even understand what a grievance is in the process. I've nailed that bad boy. Submit 3 of them. Yeah. And I represented myself in court against an NHS barrister. 4 hours, it was horrific.
Getting absolutely botany with all words they say to you and they twist things.
And in the end, you know, the judge honoured me a 4-day hearing. People have posted that online to defame me, and you think, but I'm the claimant. So I'm the claimant in those proceedings. What's your point? So all of this, the whole system is so multifaceted across the board. To bring it into one entity is so difficult because it's entangled. There's so much complexity around it all. But when it comes to whistleblowing or speaking up about these things, it goes so far, and you don't know if the manager's then been reprimanded or you know nothing. It's all hush behind closed doors.
You go and raise these concerns and you're thinking, okay, but it goes to there and it goes, that's it. It's deaf ears, it doesn't, and you're like, is this being followed up? Is this been followed? It's exhausting because of obviously what you're doing as well, and but you know, and I just think it's absolutely bonkers. Do you think, or can the NHS or the system be fixed, or has it gone too far now?
I think it's gone too far, but we mustn't forget that this is perfectly orchestrated. So it's working for what it's supposed to work for. People won't understand that.
Right.
I understand that.
Yeah. If you
the
can
reason
explain,
why they're not fixing it
is
because it's working to the way that they want it to work. Otherwise, if you can make changes for COVID overnight like that, so if you can put red tape everywhere and do a system into the theatre and women can't come in with their partners, and you can change your whole structure across, you know, millions of people
all over the
overnight like that, why can't you change safety in maternity? Half of claims in the NHS are obstetric.
What was COVID like for you? Now then, everyone, sorry to interrupt this episode, but this is a quick message from our sponsor, Loco's Competitions. They do live draws every Tuesday on Facebook at 6 p.m. Cash prizes, TVs, games consoles, vouchers, you name it, they've got it. Go check them out. Now get back to the episode.
I believed it at the start because I trusted my employer. I trusted the people that were guiding me, and I had a 5-week-old baby.
Right.
So I was in the mum bubble of, oh my God, my baby's going to die from a disease. So it was quite scary. So I had 2 vaccines and wasn't an anti-vaxxer. I am an absolute anti-vaxxer now. Yeah. However, when I went back to work, when my son was 5 months old, because my husband didn't get furlough, the wards were like tumbleweed. So there's me like looking at the BBC.
What?
It was empty. It just felt like there was no phone calls. It was really quiet. And then I started seeing all these TikToks and I was like, but my brain hadn't quite computed what was going on. I knew something was, I could smell a rat. And I was
straight away.
There's something going on here. And then what was interesting, and I talk about this a lot, the women that were not pregnant in 2019 were now pregnant in 2020 when the COVID hit. They are unvaccinated because there's no evidence, because you're not allowed to vaccinate on pregnant women because it's unethical. And they're promoting medicine as safe and effective. That means you're saying it's 100% safe. That is fundamental. That's crimes against humanity. You are not allowed to trial on pregnant women. And people aren't catching on to this.
Yeah.
So in 2020, you've got all the women who are pregnant and their outcomes are okay. But the women from 2020 that weren't pregnant, that now are pregnant, are in 2021. And that's when you start to see the rise in the baby deaths. Wow. It was quite horrific.
That's scary.
So I worked 2 days a week and all I saw was death for a lot of that. And I'm thinking, that's how you know it's not right. If you work 5 days a week, you might be seeing that. But if you're working 2 days and you're seeing that, Victoria, there's something going on.
Mentally, I can't get my head around like how you're going, that trauma. One day, you know, one death, not multiple, do you know. How are you dealing with that, and like family life and what's going on around you? How are you dealing with all that? I mean, I can't imagine how you...
You're going to make me cry. It's really tough. It's really tough. Because you're men, you don't have tissues.
We normally do have tissues in here, but...
It's really sad. It's, I think I haven't desensitized from it because I don't want to, because I want to feel. I don't want to be numb. And I want to honour those women's journeys. And I think for me it was the women labouring alone, especially when you've got babies that are dying. Like, it's hard to remember the feeling of what they feel in that moment. You might be a midwife, but you sense as a mother, you can never, ever, ever, ever fully understand, but you can empathise. And I am an empath, so I feel it. But you never forget the screams. The deep scream of a woman when she loses her baby is something you'll never forget.
I just couldn't imagine it, you know. That's what I'm saying, you know, losing, you know, one child, but when you're saying multiple, that is just like, that's scary, that's horrific. And you know, I'm not saying it can be avoided, but it's just scary when what we're talking about. It certainly needs to be looked at, and it's not, you know. And you coming on here and speaking about this, you know, because it's brushed under the carpet, and it's a scary thing. I just can't get my head around it.
You get shadow banned, or you get blocked, and you I mean, luckily on X now you can pretty much say anything. And I think the women absolutely have made a lot of noise with their stories. They have been instrumental in this half of this story coming out.
Yeah.
But what you're not seeing is the other half of the story, which is the midwives. I don't think we'll see that for many years to come, because there's no safety net.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. So you've got a woman's story, and you've got a midwife's story, and you've got a woman that's in a room only knowing what she knows, and you've got a midwife knowing what she knows, and the two of them are not allowed to talk. So you can't talk to people after, you can't contact them, you can't message them on Facebook. You're not allowed
to... after...
Nothing. There's a reason. Because they don't want you to know what each of you know. They don't want to piece the puzzle together.
That control again.
Yeah.
It's that control again.
So I'll talk about my last birth.
Yeah.
So my last birth, a gorgeous family who are very good friends of mine now, because I deliberately broke all the rules to give this family the gaps in the middle, because they blamed themselves. That's the first thing women do. What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? It's good to go in, but it's also good to piece the puzzle. Without the fundamentals of everything, you're never going to... It's like knowing that you know something's not right, but you can't put your finger on it. So this patient came in. I was on labour ward. It was so dangerously unsafe. I had a student and 3 patients. I think there were 5 on the ward. I can't quite remember. Sections going on. Triage was heaving, and there was 2 midwives.
2 of you?
2 of us.
One student being...
And no, the student was the 3rd, but she's not in the numbers. She's supernumerary because she's a student.
Yeah.
She's not an employee. She's under a contract of the university, so she's contracted in, and she should be treated as such. So you start using students as numbers, and that's when you go into really scary stuff. And then this lady had laboured behind the curtain in triage for 10 hours on her own. And she was told she had to come to labour ward at 11 a.m. And we went out at 5 p.m. and I kept going up because I could hear her. And then I realised my name and my signature is on everything on the ward. So all the OBS, all the drugs, all the CTG monitoring. I had to sign everything.
You had to sign everything?
Because the manager was so busy going in and out of rooms helping, I was pretty much...
stretched to the max.
I'm now her. And I've never gone for that job, and I certainly don't get that wage. So I'm running in and out of these rooms, helping these...
signing stuff off, just...
Vic, can you come and check this? Vic, can you come and check that? Now, I got called the Wednesday wing woman. That became my nickname, and it used to really piss me off. Like, you won't give me the job to be a freedom to speak up advisor because I won't drop my union role and I want to make change. You don't really advocate all my grievances that but you'll call me a Wednesday wing woman because you're so short-staffed. I just found it so disrespectful.
Yeah.
So this patient, you could hear her labouring and crying. So I had to go, so bearing in mind I've got patients on labour ward, I've got a lady being induced, which is high risk. I'm forcing her labour now with drugs.
And this woman's screaming.
I get pulled to go to triage to do some bloods. Which is, I get it, but my boss wasn't clocking how much, if this goes tits up, we could be in a courtroom.
Yeah.
We could be in a prison cell. Wow. That's how fragile the parallel, it's like sliding doors. It could happen in that one moment. And people don't think, they walk around indoctrinated asleep that they don't think it'll ever happen to them. Mark my words, it's going to happen. There will be a midwife in prison this year or next year with what's going on because all these reports are coming out. So I bring this lady to the room. I knocked on my matron's door and I said, I need your help. When do you ever tell a matron what to do? Brought the lady to the room and she automatically relaxed. Now she'd stayed at a certain dilatation all day because she's stressed. So she's like this. Her baby came out in really, really poor condition. Really poor condition. It was devastating. I was devastated that she was crying. Dad was a wreck. I mean, he's literally like this, shaking. Baby's having resus. But, you know, I've had to go and ring the on-call consultant to come in. It was just like, this is a shit show and this shouldn't be happening. But it was my wake-up call to say, that's enough.
That's it, I'm done. I'm
done. This family was sent to me for a reason. So when I started to raise concerns about that, the family, then when they got home, they started saying we could have done something different. We should have spoken up more. And I'm like, no, you don't get to do that to yourself. So I bumped into the dad in my local Tesco. And I said, how's the baby? Because they said that the baby might not live overnight. And did the baby have a heart condition? Which is strange because babies obviously it's a respiratory issue when they're born. He said, oh my gosh, she's going to be okay. She might have to have some tests in life, but you know, they're alive and they're coming home. And I was like, amazing. So when I started my safety campaign, she came on the campaign and saw it. And she was like, you didn't leave because of me. And I went, no, I left for you. Because without this,
I wouldn't have.
We can't make this change together. Now, what you've got, Tony, is you've got women over here and you've got midwives over here and you've got doctors over here. And none of them really get each other's side. There's not enough understanding. So what I decided to do was use restorative healing to bring into my life and teach her what was going on in the hospital that day. And that was a year ago, just a few days ago. And she said her journey would have been far harder if I hadn't pieced together the gap, that it was never her fault.
Yeah.
You can't do that normally.
You're not allowed to.
You're not allowed to.
Yeah.
So we've proven through this that there is that her perception and my perceptions of everything were completely mismatched by a system in the middle.
It's like the aftercare, you know,
There's nothing.
There's nothing there where he's saying these traumatic experiences, and I understand they to protect, you know, outside of work, I get all that, but there's got to be something in place that the aftercare for mum, baby, father, you know, that family, like you're saying there.
So Theo Clark, the MP, did a birth trauma campaign. I advocated that massively. She had birth trauma herself. She broke down in the Houses of Parliament and she got lots and lots of feedback. I sent her my exit interview and I also sent an email to all the local MPs, Keir Starmer, Rishi Sunak, all of them, and I said, this is criminal harm and manslaughter. And not one of them replied to me.
You had nothing back?
Nothing. Keir Starmer did reply. He wasn't PM then. Can I say he's an arsehole? Can you take that out?
You can say whatever you want. You can say whatever you want.
Like, I'm telling you, I'm a registrant on a governing body, and I'm telling you that this is criminal harm and manslaughter.
You're raising concerns.
And you do not even, that doesn't even twig.
It's not even like, when exactly, this is the thing in today's society that we speak about on a daily basis. When things are brought to attention, stuff like this, which needs speaking about, it's not, you know, oh, you need so many signatures and all that before we look at it. No. This needs looking at immediately, do you know, because the statistics, what you spoke about there, just your experiences, you know what I mean? There's thousands and thousands of midwives out there, NHF, and they've seen exactly what goes on. And the government, again, you know, did he say about pumping funding and all that? Yeah, because you need more staff, you need more, instead of pumping it into all of the things or lining their own pockets.
War.
What
about your children? If you
exactly,
but we know why that is.
The future, the children of the future, and it's scary. But you know, pregnant women, what do they need to know about the system that they're meant to be trusting?
That it's unsafe.
It's unsafe.
So if they know that, and this is my argument, we're not teaching women. So, for instance, I had a caseload of 200 women. That's how much I had on my caseload, 200 women at one stage when I was covering a caseload in a very big area. And I had 15-minute slots for these women. That's all I had. So I had to sit her down,
200 women.
chat to her, ask how she is mentally, do a domestic violence check, or listen, feel her tummy, palpate, listen in, measure, book any scans, check her urine, do a blood pressure, ask her how she is, and listen, which I couldn't do because I was too busy on boom. The guilt I feel that I've not given any of these women care is terrible. And it wasn't my fault, but it actually... When
you look back at it now...
I was complicit.
I
was complicit.
You're just in that zone.
Yeah, but I'm complicit because actually I knew that wasn't right, but I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
So if you think about what I'm doing, so women, if I said, look, it's unsafe, but we're in a situation where hospitals probably are safe if you have an acute emergency and if you need to be induced, if you need to be. The other side of it is it's safer to birth at home as long as you're fit and well and you're low risk. You can't have that conversation. So if we just give the actual facts of, look, it's not great in here and we're short-staffed, an expectation at least, that woman can make a choice. She can make her baby and her safe because she'll have the knowledge and the full understanding to say, right, I still want to be in hospital even though I know it's unsafe, and that's okay. You'll get the other woman that says, I don't want to come into hospital, I'm going home, and that's okay. Because they're taking their own decisions from their heart.
It's like what you said before, when you've got them coming on this date, week 39. But if that communication's there, when stuff like you're just explaining, the worry, the fear, because obviously they're that far gone, they're ready to give birth, and they're not worried. Well, no, look, we are understaffed. You know, it's that communication. You know, more staff. More, it's absolutely.
But you know, even
balmy.
from things like we're not educating young girls in school about their bodies properly. We're not really getting them to connect into their bodies. They're on, you know, contraception really early. We know that the statistics that's not great for them. We're then looking at sexual education. You know, we're talking about some of these pretty weird things now, and you think, oh, this is really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Girls from a very young age are not nurtured. You know, I talk to my boys about everything. They're like, Mum, stop.
Yeah.
Like, no. You know, I talk to them about everything, like respect of themselves, respect of women, you know, lots of things which is nurture. It is the role of a midwife and a role of a woman to nurture those around you. That system can nurture nothing but fear.
That's scary, you know, it's when you're talking like that and like you're saying, speaking to your boys and stuff like that about like, you know, respect and it's life, you know, life lessons and stuff.
They tell me, Mum,
you've
messed up. And I go, oh God, I've messed up. Shit, I've messed up. They tell me, they'll go, Mum, you're being really unreasonable. You know, I had a right argument with the school recently. Stormed in there, took my son out and filmed it. And he said, Mum, you're just being a bit too much. I was like, you're right, son, because now I'm making you uncomfortable. And I think it's really important to be aware of what battles to pick.
Yeah.
And at the moment, this is a pretty big battle for me.
Yeah.
You know,
it's huge.
It's enormous. And the fact that we're not even having the stillbirth statistics yet.
That hasn't even come to the what's the name, has it? You know what I mean?
Where are the stillbirth rates? Why have we changed the way we report stillbirths? What's going on?
Why
don't we want people to know?
Why is it not out there to see and stuff like that?
Why is the fertility rate dropped? 1.44 per woman. Has anybody touched on the fact that we've not got COVID, but we've got vaccines pumping around everybody's bodies? People not bearing in mind, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, people. I gave all my children their vaccines. Would I give them again? Absolutely not. Would I take those COVID vaccines? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
It's taught me an awful lot, and it was.
At the time, you've obviously been, because of what you were doing and stuff.
Robot, and then all of a sudden, the robot decided to run out of batteries, and my old soul came back in and said, "You need to sort yourself out." And I'm thinking, but there's no COVID in 2023, and yet there's all these sick women with blood clots, bleeding, blood pressure, brain abnormalities on the babies, induction rates. early preterm labour, blood pressure through the roof.
It's scary.
Don't go without saying.
Do you know, like, speaking out, Victoria, like whistleblowing, whatever you want to call it, is there anyone of any significance who's out there, high profile, who's reached out to you, or is anyone like sort of, is fully behind you, backing you?
Yeah. So after I got called out online that was responsible for the death of a baby, I was in a really dark place.
Yeah, I can imagine, yeah.
And I really went in, I retreated, didn't want to speak to anybody. And a friend said to me, look, there's not far from you, there's a doctor, Dr. Cartland, Dr. David Cartland. I think you should reach out to Dave. Well, we've probably spoken every day since, and he's like my brother. He's like a big brother. He's been absolutely instrumental in my recovery. I've joined his group. I've met John.
Yeah.
I've met the group. It's, it very triggering. I was very triggered by the group. I get really overwhelmed in group chats because groups of women. They
got turn, a lot to say. Got a lot.
Turn.
Oh, right.
So I was like really triggered by some of the group chat stuff, and I was like, but there was nothing in it. It was my trauma. They weren't doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
It's a trauma within me. It's a trauma of being overwhelmed by more than one person, and I'm going, just takes me back to some memories. So Dave absolutely nurtured me. He's been really instrumental in my confidence building of, if you're in your truth, you speak it.
Yeah.
So I've had Dave, but then obviously he's the one that's helped shared my profile, and within, I think it was 2 days I was on 17,000 followers, but it's completely stopped now. I can't get any more.
Because
I think so, but
yeah.
to be honest, it's not about that, but it's about the message.
I'm sure Ben can find out for you if you've been able to. He's good with things like that, but
come on, Ben.
It's stuff like that though where
I want the exit interview out there online. I want the emails to the MP where I'm saying manslaughter and criminal harm.
But it doesn't seem to be getting it, for whatever. So you look, because it's certain things what people don't want other people to know.
Or they think that's far. No one would say that to an MP.
Yeah.
Well, I bloody did.
Yeah,
I did.
But listen, if you believe in something and you're very passionate, I'm not passionate, but it's something that you're not. Listen, this is not right. This is not. You stick by what you believe in. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's in life. That's what a lot of. If the world was like that, we'd be in a better place where. If you truly believed in what you believe in and you're putting your message out there.
I've always been very outspoken, but I think as I've got older, I've learned what to speak out about.
Yeah.
Pick my battles and how I communicate it.
But are you being attacked by certain, people out there?
Yeah, it's been
high up or just from
different
angles?
Different angles. It's not been pleasant being called a baby killer.
No.
Pictures of my children circulating, pictures of my private profile circulating, people all over the world that have got good following sharing my stuff, but not just sharing one, like retweeting the same post with a new quote.
Big platforms
that on proper you think, hang on a minute, that's really spiteful. So I just ignore it. I block them. I've got this post and ghost attitude, which Nikita Stark told me to adopt. Nikita's like, post and ghost, girl, ignore it. So I do that and it works, but it didn't work the other day because the claims that I was involved with a baby death had recirculated.
Oh yeah.
And this is on a new platform now. I'm not on my old platform where I was in a movement that I set up because I thought that's old energy. It needs to go. I need to do something with me, which is the honest midwife. So that it recirculated and I then had to deal with it. So I've never actually named anybody or talked about it before until the other day. I've deleted it now because I don't want to sit in that energy.
Yeah.
I'll deal with it professionally through the right channels now to clear my name.
Yeah.
Because that's the right thing to do because I have evidence. But I don't want to sit in this energy of battling with you online. This profile will not be about that.
You're not there to do that, to do that, but
No.
there's other ways that you're forcing your energy, which you want to do and send it. But speaking about, like you say, being called, a baby killer and stuff like that, that must be horrific because, like you say, your children, your husband and stuff being posted online, that must hurt as well, you know what I mean? It must, and you put.
I think I can understand.
But
I don't know Lucy's case, but if I'm being called a baby killer, I actually doubted, did I kill that baby? I doubted myself. But I know I wasn't there at the birth of that baby. But I doubted myself through...
It's still in the back of your mind.
You're there going, but did I?
It's going back to what you said there when you get an email or a...
Yeah.
What have I done?
Triggered.
Now, speaking about Lucy Letby, which is in the news at the moment, what's your take, your own opinion on what's in the media at the moment.
I believe that she's innocent. I haven't fully followed the case. I don't know ins and outs, but I genuinely believe, knowing what I know, there's a high possibility she's been framed.
And to be I mean, obviously,
I said that a long time ago.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. There's families out there who've obviously lost babies, you know, and it's very, 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 very sad. Let's just put that out there. But how would this, like what we've spoke about, had to cover up for this midwife to go to jail and to be, you know, like I say, I don't know the ins and outs as well. I only see bits and bobs because, like I say, I don't really read like the papers or anything. I just see little clips and stuff, and I just. But I thought I'm gonna ask you, Victoria. You know, what's your take on it?
Well, I think the NHS, as it's an institution, the higher up you go, there's only a few of you, but the further you go down, obviously there's many of you. So you can just pick any one of them and go, well, we'll target her, we'll do her, because you don't want to go to prison or you don't want to be held culpable.
Yeah.
But if someone's raising concerns, I can understand why. I've been told I was going to go missing overnight. So because I left the hospital and I left their system, I couldn't...
Who was that from? Who?
I can't say.
Okay, yeah.
I've decided not to say because it was only the two of us there, and it's that person's word against mine. So I know in my heart...
You were going to go missing, that's what they said. If you raise...
No, whistleblowers go missing overnight.
That was the...
And he was very uncomfortable when he said it, so I know someone's told him to...
Someone's leaning on him.
Yes, but what was interesting, I'd already had my exit interview, so I didn't know why he had to ring me. It was an extra call. So I'd already had my exit interview. I told them everything.
So he's got afterwards.
Yeah. So he came after because I'd emailed obviously all the MPs saying this is borderline match. So I didn't even turn up to the appointment the first time because I thought, well, why do I need to see you? I've already done it.
I thought it'd been done.
So then I got an email saying, oh, Victoria, we were expecting to see you today. And I thought, why do I need to see you? And then obviously this person jumped on and was like, you know, they just want to find out your plans. I never emailed anybody in the NHS in midwifery about my exit interview. I went to the professionals. I went to...
Done it the right way.
Went the right way. I didn't go to like NHS England because I'd already done that channel through the NMC. What was interesting, I got an email from the chief midwife of the country, just pop into my Gmail, just slide into my DMs, and I was like, oh, well, who's this? Oh, my name's Kate Brintworth. I'd really like to meet with you. Just want to be nosy. Told her everything. Gave her 5 stories. A story of a young mum who was 19 years old and her baby died of SIDS and was put in a prison cell.
What?
That story is horrific. I'm writing a book about all this.
Yeah.
And this young girl, I told this chief midwife these stories. I gave her 5 counts. I gave her 3 midwife stories, 3 women's stories and 2 midwife stories, and a student midwife. All I got back was, thanks for sharing your experience. Sorry it was so negative. This is the chief midwife of the country.
Why was she not looking like, come and listen, we need to have a meeting.
All they do is, Victoria, we just want to check what you're up to see if you've got balls. And at that time, I was a little bit wobbly. Now, if she rang me, I'd be like, I'd like to see you in a courtroom. And I think midwives should club together and take this further. Take this to a sort of European court or something. It needs to be heard properly and unpicked. But it lines the wrong people's pockets. So it needs to be a people's tribunal. It needs to be a people's offering. Which is what I would like to strive for. Because a maternity inquiry, nationally, yes, so many people want it. But I don't think a lot of people understand whose pocket it's lining, who's running it, and what's the narrative.
Yeah.
I'm not stupid. I'm quite switched.
You're pretty clued up on it, aren't you?
Yeah.
Last thing I'm going to say on the Lucy Letby thing, you know, genuinely, you know, what do you think? I seen like a clip of them, you know, these people coming out. I think from the NHS. I think there was a couple of gentlemen, you know, coming speaking out saying, and a lot of people now are saying, look, this could not be down to her. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of it all.
Scary.
It's scary, you know. Why are these speaking out now? Why is this all coming to light now when she's been jailed, like, you know, a couple of years ago, I think it was now? Why someone raised concerns? You know, it's like what, you know.
I think we're in a time of truth. No, I know we're in a time of truth. This is our truth now. We are coming forward in that divine connection to ourselves that we're fed up, aren't we? We're all fed up of increased bills, working 9 till 5. We're all starting to reconnect differently as human beings. We're starting to all scratch a little bit and go, something ain't right here, but we can't put our finger on it. Most people are saying the energy's strange.
Yeah.
So we're in a bit of a shift now, and I think all of these systems are falling, they're crumbling.
Yeah.
A bit like the Tower card in the tarot, it's crumbling in. It's like something's shifting in this now. And people have just got to a point where they've lost their fear, and they also have got some self-respect. They're like, I'm just not putting up with this anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
For Lucy Letby, I did a post about this. We have to remember that whenever we say Lucy Letby's innocent, there is a family
Of course there is, yeah.
who's got a poor child that they think have got the perpetrator. Now, if it comes out that she's innocent, imagine those poor families have been lied to and gaslit by the police, the judicial, the NHS, who they trusted. That is earth-shattering.
That's
It's
traumatic anyway for them because they've lost the
Can't even
child.
imagine.
You know, but then what you're saying there, the failings again, the failings. This is what we're talking
But all they'll
about.
get is a letter that says, we will learn. We'll learn from this. No. Someone needs to swap places with Lucy Letby.
Someone needs to be accountable.
Let's swap places. Get Lucy out and get the person in there. You
Yeah.
know, because that young girl, young woman, will never recover from that. If she's innocent, she'll never recover. And it makes me question all the other ones. Beverly Allitt. I'm now starting to question, because if we think capital punishment should never be in place, because if we had that now, she would
She was, yeah, of course. You know,
it doesn't even bear thinking
capital
about.
punishment is deserved for certain individuals. We know them type of individuals. But what you're saying there, if that lady is innocent and proven innocent, imagine the death penalty was in place and she's either electrocuted or whatever it is. And
If she was in the witch trials, she would have been dead by now. It's absolutely harrowing.
it's that crazy. Where do you see the maternity services in 10 years? If things don't change.
Well, I'm going to tell you I know where it's going to be. The grassroots up, people. We've got to go right back to ourselves in community, back in circles of women, fighting for our rights in a different way. You know, I am a feminist, but I'm not. I'm not all about, you know, I'm not. There's a balance in everything.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
There's a balance. So I'm fair. And I don't tend to have a two-weighted opinion on lots of different things. I'm quite easygoing about things. You know, if that's your opinion, that's your opinion. It doesn't bother me. But I do believe this is the time now that women have to go in, midwives have to go in and ask themselves, is this right? And is this doing any harm? If you ask yourselves those questions, you might just stop before you give that next vaccine, or you put that woman on the next CTG without being
In that robot.
a robot.
Yeah.
So it's for me, it's grassroots down, because people are coming in with all these decentralized systems, big systems, and they want to fill it with volume. No, you have to go right back to the beginning, right back to the start in your homes and your families. You know, grow your own veg, talk about nurturing conversations, get rid of the TV, get rid of your TV license, people. Get rid of it all. Get rid of it. Even make your own generator. I don't care. Buy a book that says self-help if you have a power cut, which in 10 Days of Darkness might be coming. So all of these things, be more aware, be more awake, be more... turn up for yourself.
Don't be sheep, isn't it? Don't
Turn
be sheep,
up for yourself. Like, women, turn up for yourself. Don't just go in and hand yourself to a doctor and go, tell me what I need to do. You were born to be a woman. You were born to birth a baby. Only women birth babies.
Yeah.
Just so you know. But own it. Own it.
Yeah.
Carry it. Own it. Walk in there and say, thank you. Thank you, doctor, for everything you've given me. I really appreciate all your time. You don't have to be difficult about it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'll take all that evidence you've given me, all that policy, and I'll come back to you. Is that okay? Take back your control, because when you go home and you talk about it with your family and your grandmother and your mother and you ask about their births, because I said this on Doc Malik the other day, he was like, say that again. We are only one generation away from being forgotten.
Strong, powerful.
That is so true. My very dear friend Elliot told me that. He said we're one generation from forgetting. So what our grandmothers went through and our great-grandmothers went through birth and nurture and children, it's all forgotten.
Yeah.
It's all forgotten. It's all forgotten because we're giving over our power all the time. So these women and midwives need to work better together, and we need to get doulas, birth keepers. We need to look at the safety strategy of all of it. But I don't believe one system is the answer anymore. It has to widen out. And I don't like restriction. Like, religion's very restrictive, isn't it? Whereas if you put restrictions, you're always going to have a disappointment. So just let it free. Let it run free. Let it go. But let's keep it safe. We're in a very, very difficult situation. We can't just tip the balance.
No. Victoria, I want to, your mental well-being and that, it must have been, it's been tested to the max, let's say the least, to say the least. But, you know, must have been a lot of hate as well aimed towards you. How do you deal with that, your mental well-being?
Well, I'm a healer now. So I've just got my exam this year. So I've been 3 years training to be a spiritual healer. In 2020, a very dear friend of mine who's a midwife, she left the system after 5 months. She went, I'm out of here. And she never went back. She said she sat in her car with a Tesco receipt and wrote all the reasons why she should never go back. And she still got it. She got that piece of paper. She said, this is why I left. 6 months later, I hadn't even noticed she'd gone. So I find it astonishing. I've worked with these people for 10 years. I couldn't tell you any of their kids' names. I couldn't tell you where they lived. I know nothing about them because the system doesn't let you. So mentally, you have to connect. So she was a healer and said, you need to come to healing. And I was like, what is that? Never thought anything of it. And then she's going, next conversation, would you like to come to healing? So she was trying to sprinkle. And then one day she went, get up here now. They put me on the bed and they healed me non-touch, a bit like Reiki, which is touch. And I vomited. So I was, and I'm not a sicky person. I was urging. And she said, you've got so much shit, you need to get up. You've got to purge it out. And I spent the last 4 years learning, meditating, connecting to myself. I was never a believer of all of that stuff. I didn't even believe mental health was real until I was a midwife. I was so like harsh. Oh, if you're sick, you're weird. I was an absolute arsehole.
Spun it.
I couldn't be more nurturing, understanding in that empathetic way. So now, if I'm stressed, I recognise it, I honour it, I go in and I ask myself.
You deal with it in that way.
That's it. That's all I can do. What those people think of me is none of my business.
It doesn't.
Not really, not now.
When,
Some think the baby killer thing.
Yeah, of course.
That's not been pleasant.
No, I can imagine that's not to be.
But the rest of it, you could call me whatever you like. I love who I am.
Yeah.
I love myself. I've been a good mother. I'm a good midwife. I've been good to people.
Yeah.
If I can honour that in myself, I can live every day in integrity.
No, that's it, isn't it? But, you know, from all of this, you know, you say gay, you know, what do you want to get? What, you're not going away. You're wanting to bring this, where, you want to go as far as you can with it. Where do you know?
Again, not restrictive. It's just got to flow.
It's going. It's just
gotta flow.
Going with it. You know, obviously the government and, you know, listen, changes need to be made and you're aiming towards...
They need to be gone.
You know, listen, we know that, but I'm just saying to be spoken or something needs to be done within the system. Obviously, it's got to go through the governments and whatever you want to call them.
Well, it doesn't. We as a people can take over.
You know...
The people can get together, put a crowdfunder together and do a people's tribunal and do it themselves. So I had a solicitor, social work consultant, and I had 2 other people who are social workers quite hard. They're retired now. They all came to me and said, we're your panel. We'll do your people's tribunal. Just get some money together. But I got called a baby killer after that, and it all just obliterated the whole thing. Oh. But that's what's needing. They don't want me to do that. They don't want anyone to do that. So if we could have a team of 50 people, which are members of the public, that can number crunch, data crunch, but we need, if we're going to do it, we need to have the package of aftercare because you're expecting people to unearth a lot of trauma. You can't just leave them. So this is a mammoth task.
Would that be able to go into the NHS? Would they allow that?
No.
Of course, that's what I mean.
That's why they pay you off.
That's, yeah.
I never took the money, by the way.
Yeah, but obviously you feel so much better for speaking out, the weight and everything.
Yeah, I'm actually glowing, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, some of the, like, what you spoke about earlier in the episode was, I could see it. I could see it in your eyes, you know what I mean? I could see how angry and let down, you know, and just the experiences that you've been through. And I'm 1 or 2 midwives that I've spoken to myself, and it's not, this is scary. It's absolutely, it's bonkers, like, you know what I mean? But what's in the pipeline for Victoria?
Oh God, who knows? I generally don't know. I mean, I'm not working. I've not worked for a year. I've come off the register, but I would like to get myself back to a place where I can go back on the register with a bit of protection. Because if I'd done this on the register, they would have put me through a fitness to practice. Mm-hmm. No, without a fail, they would have said I've publicly shamed the NHS. Like, you know, the NHS is a protected characteristic and all of this rubbish. You know, it's only protected if you believe it is. You know, if you want to stand and clap for it, I wouldn't be clapping for that. Never.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, I actually felt, the distaste of seeing the NMC leave my bank account just the name, the words. If you think about energy and vibration, just those words on my bank statement used to repulse me. It's got to go. I don't want the NHS salary showing up on my bank statements. I want it all
You don't
gone.
want anything to do with it.
No, wanted it all gone. I felt repulsed to be part of it.
Seriously, yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard because obviously I've got friends that still work in there, and they probably think, "What a bitch." It's not personal.
But it's not personal.
It's a different journey.
Yeah. No, that's just, and that's you, Victoria. You know, everyone's different. But, you know, and if you want to speak and you speak openly, that's you, and there's nothing wrong with that, you know. So I'm just, you know, I just want to say thank you for it, you know. But one last thing I want to touch on, family life today, you know, with your husband, your kids, your support. What's that like today? Even though it's been strong from the outset.
Well, I was married before. My ex-husband and I are like very, very good friends. We speak every day. He's such a big supporter, but him and my husband get on amazing. So our family isn't just myself, my husband and our son. It's my ex-husband and our children and all of us together, and it's rock solid. So when people say things like social services will come and take your children, they do that because they've divided families up and exes don't tend to get on. Well, try it with Andrew and I. We are like armour. You know, we are literally like this. He is my biggest supporter, and he's like, I'm so proud of you, for our kids as well, and our kids' kids. So, but he said to me about 5 years ago, I've got a funny feeling you're going to be a huge change in maternity. And I was like, what are you gasping about? So my family is everything. If someone said, you ex has gone, you know, the NHS has changed, it's all sorted out, I would be like, I've done a good job, I've done a deed, I can move on.
Yeah.
So nothing in my life is unhappy. I'm really lucky. I don't have a lot. You know, I rent, I haven't bought a house yet, don't have any savings. It's been tough, but my husband he's been like, babe, you go and do it.
I seen a picture of you all together, I think it was a couple of days ago, and I thought, you know what, you can see, you know, you all look happy and stuff, and it's considering what you're talking about and busy day-to-day stuff, juggling family life, you know, it's hard, and anyone who's got kids and that, you know, whether they're young or whether they're old, you know.
And like today, I talk about my ancestry. So I'm a descendant of a McEnroy clan in Scotland, an Irish background, and my great-great-great-great-grandfather was a survivor of the Battle of Waterloo. Now, without him surviving that awful war, we wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be here today. I talk about him now. I want my children to talk about their great-grandmother that stood up and said, and I say to my kids, you can always have an opinion if you just do it gently with kindness. It's all how you communicate it.
Yeah.
You can say some really hard, difficult things as long as it's kind.
It's in the right way and stuff. And
yeah. And on my grievance, it was said in my grievance that I was very eloquent, and it never came from a place of anger. It only ever came from a place of change.
Yeah.
That was it.
Victoria, listen, that has been one powerful, powerful episode, and I just want to say thank you so much for sharing the good, the bad and the ugly.
Thank you
very much. Thank you.
Thanks.